Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. We have with us another special guest who goes by the name of Hank Balch. So Hank is interesting because his space is another unique space, and it's called sterile processing. So what exactly is sterile processing? You know what? I'm not even going to give it away. I'm going to save it for when you listen to this interview. Just a little bit more about Hank. He is the founder and president of Beyond Clean. He began his career in instrument reprocessing as a frontline technician in 2009 and then served as an instrument database specialist. He went on to become a sterile processing leader, and he ultimately started these podcasts, which became businesses for him. And he's written over 150 sterile processing articles, and his work is published all around in all the top magazines that feature sterile processing. And his passion is seeing frontline sterile processing professionals equipped to fight dirty every instrument, every time. Great tagline. So again, this is a unique space. It's not a common space. And I want to say I've had very few guests, if any, that have talked about sterile processing. So as always, we bring you innovative guests that are doing things a little differently and bringing innovation to the medical sales space. And this is another one of those episodes. So make sure you tune in, and I really do hope you enjoy this interview. How are we doing, Hank?
Doing very well. Thank you. Thank you.
Good to have you on the show. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
So my name is Hank Balch. I am serial entrepreneur in the media space, particular social media. I've got a couple of companies that all started as podcasts in the clinical education space, within medical device reprocessing, healthcare supply chain, operating room, and infection prevention. And even though we're about 5 years in to the first company, I'm still doing all kinds of random things on the front lines, like creating graphics, scripting, podcast interviews, etc. So, I do it all, I think, on this side of the equation.
Wow. So 4 companies, and all of them do non-marketing, but
Right.
outreach for other companies.
Yeah. So I actually, I know we'll probably get into some of this, but I was in the hospital setting back in 2009. I began my career as a sterile processing technician, which, for those of y'all not familiar with sterile processing, that's the cleaning and sterilization of surgical instruments. That always kind of blows people's minds. Um, Out there, kind of outside of med device, they're like, oh, they reuse instruments on people? Yeah, they do. And you want them clean, you want them sterilized, you want them functional. And that's what the team down in sterile processing does. But yeah, I started in 2009, and I was already kind of tuned into social media, like a lot of folks in my generation, and so I started looking around for content to learn more about the industry. And I was really shocked that there was almost nothing out there. So a couple of years went by, and I was still kind of learning the old-fashioned way through some textbooks they had, some certification training programs, and I finally got my butt on LinkedIn in 2013, and that's when I decided, if the content isn't out there yet, I'm gonna start creating some. And it began way back then as kind of blogging about sterile processing, and then along the way has turned into a couple of these media companies that do this same thing at scale around the country.
Wow. So when did it start to branch away from sterile processing? I mean, well, actually, give us a timeline here from college to the creation of your first company. How much time had passed?
Man, don't get me started on college, right? So I was one of those that, like a lot of folks out there, I went to college. My parents were like, college that's where you go after you get done with high school. That's it. No questions asked. Your butt's going to college. Um, I went to college, actually Texas A&M, and I had a full ride to
Nice.
become a history teacher.
Okay.
So I had a little bit of college money that was saved up, but I didn't need it because I had a full ride. So I bought like a used pickup truck. It wasn't too much. It was like $15,000 or something. But long story short, I get through my freshman year, and I make a 2.97, but I needed a 3.0 to keep my full ride scholarship and
Wow.
lost it. So here I am as a college sophomore, no college money, and I've got this used pickup truck now
Wow.
with the little college money that I had. But when I lost the scholarship, I kind of had a come to Jesus moment and said, "Hey, I don't have to be a history teacher anymore because that's what the scholarship was kind of around. What do I want to do with my life?" Uh, Ended up going into studying agriculture, which has nothing to do with what I do today.
Hmm.
Graduated and went to seminary for 5 years. That has nothing to
Wow.
do with
Okay.
what I do today.
All right.
Graduated seminary, went to law school for a year and a half before I dropped out with that, which has nothing to do with what I do today. But along the way, kind of in that graduate school time, was when I got into sterile processing because I needed a job that would let me try to work my way through school. And what was great about sterile processing was there's all three shifts. So I could work in the evening, I could go to school in the morning, and they did tuition reimbursement at the hospital. So yeah, I got there, and as you can
Were
tell,
you at the sterile? Were you at the sterile processing place when you were in the law school stint too?
yes, I was. Yep, still there, working
So you were
through.
just you were really figuring it out. I mean, could you? I mean, of course you could say. I mean, those trying all those different career paths, you probably took good chunks of information that gave you the confidence when you got into sterile processing to take it to a different level.
I did learn a lot, right? I think any experience that you're in, like you learn if you're wanting to learn. And that's kind of what I would challenge folks, listen to this is, hey, yeah, like you may be in a job you don't like, you may be in a situation that you don't like, you don't want to be there forever, but don't look too far past it. You really need to soak up, just like what you said. There's things there that are going to help you in some form or fashion down the road. And I remember as a grad student, this was before I was working at the hospital. I was working second shift at the local Walmart. And in Kentucky, there's like these little small Walmarts called neighborhood Walmarts. And so they're like green. And there's not all like you don't buy clothes, you just buy like food. It's like a little market. And I was working there, stocking shelves, looking around, just thinking, I think I'm the only one that works here that has a college degree. And it could have been tempting to say, I'm too good for this.
Hmm.
But then I was like, you know what? I need a paycheck.
Hmm.
And these people hired me. So
Right.
I ain't too good for this. I need to do a good job and I need to keep trying to figure out what I want to do with my life if I don't want to keep on working at Walmart, which that crossed my mind. Like, I don't know if a lot of folks know this, but directors of Walmart are making like over six figures to run those Walmart stores. So that is a great career trajectory if
Hmm.
that's your thing, but it just wasn't my thing. So um, to your point about going through in the grad school and in the law school, uh, even that whole time I was working in the hospital, and I was thinking, yeah, this is not. I'm not going to stay in healthcare. This is just my kind of little way to get to where I
Oh
want to
wow.
go,
You weren't
and
even.
end
Yeah,
up coming
you weren't
back,
even
and
trying to make those connections. You weren't even
that's
trying
right.
to make those connections.
I
Wow.
wasn't.
Okay.
And
Okay.
dude, like speaking of connections, so go back to college. I hated the term networking. I was like deathly afraid. And every time, like, college professors are real big on that. They're like, no, guys, you got to get out. You got to network. You got to build that
Right.
network. And
Right.
I'm just like,
Right.
I don't want to do that. Like, I don't like meeting strangers. I don't want to talk to people like that. And wouldn't you know that through that, all of that school and everything else, like when I graduated, the most important thing in my life became not what I knew or the degrees I had, but who I knew, who I had networked with. Nobody's asked me, what was your undergrad in? Or what was your GPA in? Not
Right.
once. But I've had a lot of phone calls, a lot of interviews because I knew somebody who knew somebody who got me that
Right.
opportunity or kicked that door open.
Right.
It's huge.
Right. No, I mean that's the reason why we're here today. So yeah, it's absolutely huge. I want to know the moment. you know, so you're this guy. You're doing your second act, right? And you're in sterile processing. I need to know the moment that you said, you know what, I'm gonna go this direction within sterile processing, right? Because I'm sure at first you were just working, especially if you didn't even you hadn't yet made those connections with the wonderful experiences you were getting. You were just working, trying to do your job, do your thing. What changed? You know, what happened? Was it an experience? Was it just you woke up one morning? Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I had been in college for 10 years straight. Now, if there's any doctors listening to this, they'll be like, yeah, yeah, suck it up, sissy, right? Okay, yeah, what to do? But I was in college for 4 years and I did 5 years for a master's degree. Then I went right in to law school for that year and a half. And it was that third semester of law school. So it was in the fall, the middle of semester, and I'm thinking I could finish this if I wanted to, but do I really want to? Uh, do I want to keep spending the money to pay tuition? Do I really want to be an attorney? I still didn't really know what I wanted to be. And at the same time, as you mentioned, I was in that sterile processing department that I enjoy the job. I enjoyed the people. I could see opportunity for growth. That was big for me. Like whatever I did, I wanted to be able to see a pathway to grow. And you know, that around all that time when all this kind of fogginess and everything's happening, our, our manager at the department quit and took a job in Florida. And the director of the manager came to me one day and said, Hank, I know you're not too thrilled about the law school stuff. Would you be interested in throwing your name in the hat for this management position?
Wait, stop,
And
stop. Wait. That's fantastic. But let's be clear. What was the role before you were asked to step into management? What was your job title and what were your responsibilities?
yeah, I had a really good manager, really good director who were also very committed to building pathways for growth. And so when I started law school, I moved up from the frontline technician that's like the normal sterile processing technician, like in the decontamination area, inspecting the trays, packaging the trays, sterilizing them, to what we called a database specialist. And so I was handling all of the instrument tracking because this is like expensive inventory, like surgical instruments are not cheap, but they often get lost and misplaced if they're not labeled correctly and everything else. And so I was kind of managing that job. What's funny, my manager at the time, he was like, hey, this is going to be a new role. So I'm going to let you pick your own job title. And I went to the internet, I remember, and I like Google like job title generator and I threw in all these words. And anyways, so like we ended up with database specialist. It was actually called like integrated database specialist, which did not mean anything at all, but it was kind of fun. So I was in that job, yeah, and threw my name in the hat, and then just kind of said, "Hey, I'm ready to start making some money instead of just giving all my money to the school or to debt." And yeah, that was all it took. And I don't think that was the moment that I knew this is going to be my forever career, but it was the moment that the shift happened. Now looking back, I can say, yeah, that that was a pivotal decision for me.
And then when you first started, was it just kind of you and your ideas and you had to find a team? Did you have partners that you were establishing the idea or fleshing out the idea with? What was the pathway?
So I've always been contrarian. And when I got into the industry, looked around, like I said, there wasn't a lot of information to consume. And the few voices that were out there talking in the industry, kind of from the leadership perspective, I didn't agree with what they were saying. And I started voicing my opinion. Um,
Mm,
and so the power of social media, this kind of goes back to everything that we're talking about here, is it gives people, it democratizes
yep. Levels
opinions.
the playing field. It
It
levels the playing.
does. It takes away the gatekeepers. And
Mm,
so I was able to speak directly to an entire industry through my LinkedIn blogging and articles that really challenged the status quo almost immediately because no one else was really out there writing. And the way I was writing wasn't, just to like, stir up crap and like throw bombs and see it explode. Like I was actually asking, hey, why do we do it this way? Has
Mm-hmm.
anyone ever said a better way? Like, why don't we collaborate in this way? Why don't we do new things? Challenge the status quo. And from that contrarian nature, more and more folks started paying attention to what I had to say, both on kind of the establishment side of things, but then all of these new leaders who felt the same way I did, but didn't really have any place to go to have that conversation. So I began doing that in 2013. And I told myself at the beginning, I had been a blogger kind of years before on all kinds of different topics. So I knew the blogging space. And I said, hey, I'm going to do this if no one reads it. Even if no one reads it, I'm not going to be blogging and just saying, oh, like if only 5 or 10 people read it, I'm not going to blog again tomorrow or next
Mm-hmm.
week. I said, I'm just going to do this because I want to do it. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's the right thing and I'm going to keep on doing it. And I did that for 3 years. I mean, really, I guess like 2 years until everything really started to come together in terms of the profession, the industry, the timing, the opportunities for me, and then all these synergies kind of spilled over from there.
So, with all of your fantastic services, what's the best way medical sales reps can benefit from what you guys do?
Yeah. So I think the most surprising thing has been the value of clinical conversation to these sales reps because you got to think about it. You've got a lot of windshield time. You're driving from hospital to hospital, from account
Yeah.
to account.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing besides jamming out? I don't know. Let's see, Jimi Hendrix or Van
or
Halen or
or
something.
listening to Kindle and listening to audio tapes
There,
or listening
there
to
you
a
go.
podcast. I mean, come on.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, the podcast is the point, right? So early on in our podcast, we created all these podcasts and conversations specifically for the clinicians. We wanted to be talking to other people in the trenches, doing the job, making the decisions. And a couple of months after we launched the podcast, we started getting all this feedback from medical device sales reps. And they were saying, hey, we love your podcast
That's
because now this gives us a topic of conversation to have when we get to the accounts. It's
Wait,
not
wait, and
just
just so
strolling in.
everyone's clear,
Yeah,
which
go ahead.
which is the name of this podcast that we're talking about right now?
Yeah. So the first child, the first podcast baby that we had is called Beyond Clean, and
Not
that's the
clean.
sterile
Okay.
process one. Yeah, that's the
All right.
baby pod. That's the Big Brother podcast. Yeah. And yeah, so we got all this feedback, and folks were just like, instead of talking about the weather or the game on Sunday or whatever, which those are fine topics to have, but it began equipping with that conversational, like with the language, with the challenges, with the
Yeah.
frustrations, with the
Yeah.
inspiration, to
Mm-hmm.
then build that true relational connection that all of sales revolves around, that then is infused now with some clinical content and education. And um, over the years, like we've continued to do that through the podcasts, through all of the social media content that we put out. All of our webinars and conferences are all available to medical device sales folks. So it is it's a good safe place to go because it's an open source conversation. Nobody is like taking your attendance, reporting to your boss or your competitors, but you can actually see and engage in those same kind of conversations in a way that's, I think, very hard to do outside of social media.
Absolutely. I love the role you're playing in social media, and really, you're an advocate for the importance of social media. One thing that I've heard discussions about and had discussions about is how with med tech, it's kind of like one of the slower industries to picking up technologies around social
Yeah,
media and what it can
what's the
do
thing with
for the
that?
company, right?
Like you
Yeah,
would
right.
think we would not be,
Yeah,
but we are.
you think it'd be the opposite, but you guys are really making headway in this space. Where do you really think it's going to be? Project 10 years. How do you think companies are going to be utilizing social media? And maybe 10 years is too aggressive because things move so fast now.
I
Project
agree.
5 years. Give me five
Right.
years out. Where does a medical sales rep fall into this?
Hmm.
How is social media going to continue to transform the way we do things? How are you seeing things?
I'd say right now, if you look at the influencer model, that's really made popular, kind of like Instagram consumer kind of stuff. Hey, like I'm wearing a jacket, go buy it, I love it, I live the good life, follow me for more, whatever. That model is coming over into platforms like LinkedIn and other social media platforms specific to medtech. You see all kinds of sales reps now that are building their whole brand, their personal brand, their influencer brand, and it is impacting their customers. If it's B2B, if it's B2C, uh, it's creating synergies for them because you got to remember, and this is a key, like we tell this to all of our listeners, but definitely all of the manufacturers and stuff that partner with us. People can forget, especially the big med tech, like the ones that take a while to convert, kind of what you were saying. They pretend that social media is all digital.
Mhm.
They forget that there's people on the other side of those profiles, like actual decision makers who have friends that have connections that have their own networks. And so if you have a legit, honest, and valuable conversation in the digital space, it will convert into real relationships, real opportunities, and real branding for you as an individual, then also for your company. And so to kind of tie this together, I see the next, 5, 10 years, I see that influencer model just continuing to grow at the individual level. Um, and I see these brands, especially the big boys, starting to wake up, not because they like see the light. I think they're going to start seeing all this competition from all
Right.
these smaller brands that do social better, like edging out that network and starting to build momentum to where they can no longer ignore the fact that these things are happening right now on social media today.
No, it's real. I mean, that's one of the things we do here is we help those sales reps build those brands. So it's a critical thing. I love it. I love it. Okay, Hank, any message you want to share with the audience before we wrap up today?
I would say if you want to be a better writer, read more. If you want to be a better salesperson, uh, you should be sold to more. And I kind of say that as a content creator, right? Because I'm real bad about consuming other people's content because I'm so busy creating my own content, doing my own
Right.
podcast, writing my own blogs, not
Mm-hmm.
consuming other folks' content. So I would challenge you on the sell side to be tuned in to how everybody is out there, specifically in this digital space, selling.
Mm-hmm.
See what they're doing, see what the reactions are, what the engagement is on that social space. And again, at the end of the day, like we subscribe to the Gary V model of what he calls 51%. Always give at least that 51% of value in your post as opposed to asking people to do something on your post. And that's the difference in our view of just pure marketing, which is ask, 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 come on and buy, 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 to hey, give value, more insight, perspective, encouragement, even inspiration in some sense can be
Yeah.
giving more through your page, through your brand than what you're asking for. If you're going to be doing those things, you will win in the digital media space today.
Excellent, excellent advice. Hank, before we wrap up, we're going to do a lightning round. And I'm going to
Okay.
ask you four different questions. You have less than 10 seconds to answer. Are you ready?
No, but go ahead.
All right. Best book you've read in the last 6 months?
Rocket fuel. And I learned what the difference is in a visionary and an integrator. So if you're in the startup world, check it out.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. I am going to check that out. Rocket Fuel by who?
You would ask me that. I have no idea who wrote it, but it was a good book.
All right, all right, all right. Rock, we can't miss it though, right? Came out this year?
No, I think it came out a
Oh,
couple years ago. Yep,
a couple years
yep.
ago. Okay, I'll check into it. Rocket Fuel. All right, best movie in the last 6 months.
Well, that has come out last 6 months. I have no idea, but I just watched Godfather 1 and 2 again last
Oh
night.
man,
You cannot
it's
recommend that
it's like
enough.
brand new every time. It's literally brand
It
new
is.
every single time.
But
That's
I mean,
great.
those things are freaking long, so you got to like carve out like six
It's an
hours if you're
event.
gonna watch them back to back.
Oh yeah, it's an event. You got to pack lunches and everything. All right, best meal you've had in the last 6 months.
I'll tell you, we office right down the street from this like meat company called Cabalar that has like halves of cows hanging like behind the people who are cooking, like a legit kind of meat place. And they have a fantastic barbecue burger that the
Hmm.
team went last week or the week before. So I'm gonna have to go with some Cavalier meat.
Ooh, I've never even heard of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then last question, best experience you've had in the last 6 months.
Well, I've got a 4-month-old daughter, so I would say
Congratulations.
becoming a girl dad. Yep, we had two boys. They are now 6 and 3, and so yeah, we got this little 4-month-old daughter. So I'm I'm hooked, man. Yeah,
I can
it's
only imagine,
it's
man. I
different
can only imagine.
experience.
Yeah, yeah. She owns you now. That
I
is
tell you
fantastic.
what. Yeah, well, she owns all the little brothers too. You should see them in the morning. They
She owns
like
the entire
flock
house right
into the
now.
room.
That is fantastic. Well, that's congratulations, man. That's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
One last thing I do want to mention, and then we didn't get to talk about too much today, but just last thoughts on it, I guess. What's the importance of a medical sales rep, and really anyone, but especially medical sales reps, to learn the art of copy? How do you see that?
If you can learn it, you are like putting yourself in the top 1% because copy ain't easy. That's why that's why it's so sought after. But if you think about it, copy is everywhere. Like somebody has to write the title to this podcast. It's copy. Someone has to write the description. That's copy. Someone has to write your brochure that you're giving the customer. That's copy. You got to write an email. That's copy. And let me tell you, not everyone opens their emails. I got like 20,000 emails unopened in my inbox right now, that some of which may have been opened with better copy. So
Mm,
copy, I mean, I cannot overstate the the value of copy, but you will not learn it through templates on Google. You're not going to learn it from copy and pasting other things that you see. Like it really has to be an organic outgrowth of what you know and what you know about that person on the other end of the email. And that's the big takeaway here. It's not just about the numbers, the open rates, and everything else. It's about who is opening it or who do you want to open it, and how can you get around their gatekeeping brain that says, I don't have time to open this or I don't have time to hear this, and really hook them up front with good copy. So, yeah, that's worth studying. I'll tell you that for sure.
all right, all right. Loved your final thoughts on that, Hank. Once again, it was a pleasure having you on the show, and we're going to be looking after your companies, listening to your podcasts, and can't wait to see you again.
Sounds good. I appreciate the invite, and yeah, good luck to everyone out there in cyberspace with your copy and with your brand building. It's a great time to be in medical sales.
Hank Balch. He's impressive because he took sterile processing, which it's known for all reps that are in the OR, but it's not known outside of that, not really well anyway. And he created a podcast and a platform that commanded over 1 million downloads. That's huge. I mean, that is just huge, and absolute respect to him and what he's doing, and the pioneering ways he's creating for the sterile processing space. So maybe you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I want to be in this world. Maybe sterile processing has piqued your interest, or maybe it's a different type of sales. Maybe listen to these episodes for a little while and you've been just thinking about how are you going to get into this industry? You might be someone that's really clueless on where to start, or you've sent over 50 applications all over the internet and you haven't heard a thing back, or you keep getting that automatic rejection letter, or you're getting interviews, but you keep getting deselected. Someone else is getting the position over you. And you've been told it's your lack of sales experience. You've been told it's your lack of work experience. You've been told whatever reason you've been told. But I'm here to tell you that if you have a bachelor's degree, and if you have a strong work ethic, and if you have done good things for the company you already work for, then you have a chance and opportunity to work in medical sales. And it's a matter of making sure you find the right position, the right field, really, then the right position, and then doing the work to get those interviews. And of course, knocking those interviews at the park to get the offer. The solution is we handle all of that. And you can find us at evolveyoursuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role, fill out a short application, submit your information, and let's have a conversation about how you can be in a medical sales role. This is a field that I champion every single day because of what it's done for myself, what it's done for my friends and family, what it's done for the people that I've coached. It's a fantastic industry, and it's a growing industry, and there's an opportunity for anyone that's serious about making a difference when it comes to patient lives. And of course, if you're in the field out there and you're working your butt off and you're trying to make things happen and things aren't happening quite the way you want them to, or maybe you're thinking about next year and you say, you know what, I really want next year to be my year. I want to show up in ways I've never shown up before. Then visit evolveyoursuccess.com, select Improve Sales Performance, take a look at our sales training program, submit the application, have a conversation, and let's get you to where you want to be in 2023. As always, we do our best to bring you guests that are innovative, that are doing things differently in the med sales space, that are pioneering whole new levels of attention to spaces that were otherwise pretty obscure. This is what we're about here at the Medical Sales Podcast, and I always thank you all for listening and having a true interest. So make sure you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.